Welcome to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. I'm your host, Casey Garrett, and together we'll be discovering and learning from inspiring voices of healers, medicine keepers, and visionaries. Every episode, we'll explore the world of health, vibrant wellness, and natural medicine for a new era of human society. Welcome to today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. So today I'm really excited to host our first trio episode of our season 2. They're always so fun and give you such rich diversity of perspective and voices in the space. Today I'm extra excited to be beside 3 guides that I know and love quite well, Jonna Graulich, Jake McWink, and Michaela Komacher. They're all microdosing guides in the United States. Jonna and Jake are in Colorado, and Michaela is up in the Pacific Northwest. And today, I was really inspired to share their work today because so many of you this year are coming to practice, having profound results with microdosing in your own personal life. You feel kind of called to step into this work, and then you say, am I really allowed? Am I really capable? Am I built to do this work? I don't have the right background. And I thought these 3 in particular are such a beautiful illustration of people who were drawn to the work, who probably had no idea 20 years ago that they would be working with magic mushrooms today. And they have such a beautiful paths that how the medicine called them, and they moved through their own personal process and are now serving people as gifted guides today in the field. So I wanted to share their stories and voices as affirmation and inspiration to all of you who are feeling that same pull right now. So welcome, you 3. So good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
So let's start off with Jonna. So Jonna has one of these remarkable personal stories. So person who probably never a few years ago thought that she would be doing this work today. So Jonna, I'd love to open it up by giving you an opportunity to share a little bit of your path and story and how the medicine called you and now brought you to today serving in this field.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, what a surprise it's been to be here today. I never, ever would have guessed. So I was very fortunate to have 30 plus years in my professional life in the health and wellness arena. I've always been, since I was a little girl, really passionate about helping people improve and optimize their health and well-being. So I knew I didn't want to be helping sick people get better. I wanted to help healthy people really optimize their life in all the ways. Always been drawn to the holistic approach of mind, body, soul, all of the things. And so I was very lucky to get to do that in corporate America, but I was always very much like a rule follower, right? So never ever would guess that I'd be working with psychedelic medicine. But it was about 2019, I followed all the research and all the emerging science and really started learning about psychedelics for healing. And so I was curious and I started microdosing in 2019, and it was a game changer for me personally. I had been doing therapy and feeling stuck. I literally think I told my therapist, I'm so stuck, like I can't break through for so many years. And when I started microdosing, it was this perspective change that helped me break through things. It gave me this clarity, this sense of knowing, this sense of peace. And I could go on, but that's not the point here. What I also noticed is in my professional life as a leader in corporate America, I had so many moments of just being able to see the way, just get real clear on like, this is how we can make that process more efficient. This is what we need to do with the team. This is how we can rethink everything we've ever done. And I was able to bring that into my work life. And my roles have often been about transforming teams. How can we do things different? How can we get better results? How can we save money? And I was very successful in doing that. So here I am just grooving along and could not read enough, learn enough, just personal passion on the side. I'm not rolling into work telling people I'm microdosing, but I'm reading everything I can get my hands on. I'm following the research. And that's when I found you, Casey. I think I just was called to do a little bit more. And I wanted I wanted to know somebody in real life who worked with real clients and understand that side of it, not just what we can read about and learn about. And I started in your mastermind group and learning from all of your amazing guides and coaches there, just riding along, not thinking I'm ever going to do this, but like maybe someday a retirement job, you know? Um, and it was last year, I just felt this calling to kind of put together a program because I was bubbling up with excitement from what I had learned from these other coaches. So I put together a little program, a pilot program, offered it to people in my community for free. And weirdly enough, as that was wrapping up, I got laid off from my job. And so the universe just gave me a little boot out of my comfort nest and offered me this opportunity. And, it didn't even occur to me in the beginning after it was surprising layoff, right? I was at the top of my game. My team was high performing. I didn't expect it. But those of you that understand corporate America and the dynamics today, it's like, when you have a well-oiled machine, a high-functioning team, and you're paid a lot of money, you're not necessarily needed anymore. You're a great place to cut. So my work there was done, and I spent some time grieving and trying to figure out like what the heck do I want to do next, and this is where my heart was. So I decided if I don't invest now in myself and in this dream and this vision of being able to support people in this way, when will I? So here I am. And I've been working with clients and doing groups now. And it's a very scary transition, but it's feeling really, really good and really soul aligned for me.
Gorgeous. Thank you. Thank you. Jake, how about you? I know your path in part was informed and inspired by a significant health event you experienced. So I'd love for you to share similarly.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. And thanks again for this container. John, I really appreciated kind of what you shared because I too, in one regard, hail from the corporate space. I had actually been, I had say like a successful-ish career at a ethics and compliance technology company, just in a few different kind of various roles was, around customer success, sales, product. And then actually in 2019, I ended up having a stroke as a result of a skiing accident while I was skiing internationally. And the stroke ended up taking place while I was in Hong Kong. And so it took a while for me to get back to the United States. By the time I was able to get back, there wasn't necessarily a whole lot the doctors were able to do. They're like, sorry, Jake, you're way past the point of any intervention that we could have done. And so they said, here's speech, occupational, and physical therapy. But your recovery is going to be contingent on your brain's ability to reform new neural connections around the part that was damaged. So naturally, I was like, well, do you have anything for that? Obviously, they said no, just like kind of do your therapies. But, I was pretty young at the time. I was 29. And that was just kind of like too long of a life sentence to have effectively like a 2-year-old on my right-hand side. So I had always been psychedelically curious, kind of dabbled. So I wasn't super scared of them, but I had seen a lot of research indicating that they helped with neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. And I saw that kind of famous circular network diagram from Robert Carhart Harris of like, this is your brain on drugs. I was like, well, that seems like exactly what my brain needs. And so I just began kind of doing my own like pharmacology experiment through microdosing with both LSD or psilocybin, essentially whatever I could get my hands on. I was totally desperate. And something really interesting started happening. I would call them miracle weeks. And these miracle weeks would be associated when I microdosed. And so it wasn't anything major, but just something would come online that hadn't been there since the stroke. So I didn't necessarily think a whole lot to it. I was just really glad that it was working and I was getting better. But then effectively I got kind of 100% kind of recovery back, which was kind of a miracle. And so then, interestingly enough, kind of some regulations were changing here in the state of Colorado. And I was becoming kind of less and less satisfied with kind of corporate life and the way that it was working. And one of the things that I began to realize was like, well, Jake, you have this story, you had this experience. Through that experience, you began to understand how these compounds are tools, and they're deeper tools for healing than you have any idea. Is there a way for you to maybe honor your story, honor that transition and that healing, and be able to potentially help support others moving forward? So, as regulations kind of formally moved in Colorado, end of 2022, I just kind of did a full pivot, and I just had recognized that I've always loved, thinking deeply about life and working with people. And so working with psychedelics seemed like a really beautiful intersection of all of these components. And so I just felt this like moral compulsion to go and study it and learn it and get my hands dirty and learn as much as I could, so that if I was indeed going to be helping support other people, that I would be doing so in as kind of learned fashion as possible. So that's kind of the genesis of the way that this has moved forward for me.
Amazing. Thank you. Michaela, now you came into medicine practice having been a psychotherapist of many, many years. So similarly, I'd love to share your background.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. It's been a very gradual and meaningful transition for sure. And as you've mentioned, I do have a long history in the healing arts field and the mental health field. And for many years have sat and held space in more of a therapeutic clinical setting. But what I have found over time, both personally and professionally, is that healing doesn't always follow, nor does it require a clinical path. And so for me, when I started doing my own personal work back in 2016 and working with plant medicine, I gained an expanded understanding of the human experience, and it moved me beyond the purely mental health clinical lens into something more broader, into more of a holistic view that includes the mind, but also the body, the heart, and the spiritual and energetic layers of our humanness. And so with this expanded understanding also lies the fact that not everybody has clinical needs, but we all have human needs. We all have the need to be able to feel connected, to feel a sense of safety, and to be met with presence and care as we navigate our human experiences and all the complexity and richness that life itself has to offer. And so it is from this place that I had a very deep desire to create space where I can meet people in their full humanity, not through a clinical lens, but through more of a relational, intuitive, and a heart-centered space where we get to slow down, where we get to honor the body's wisdom, where we get to honor the depth of our human experience and the emotions and felt senses that come along with it, and where we get to support the nervous system into safety, so curiosity and compassion can start to become the inner guide to lead us to meeting ourselves and remembering who we truly are. And so, I believe that both roles have their own space, and each space requires presence, requires discernment, and a deep attunement to individual needs and safety needs. So yeah, that was my transition into this work.
Beautiful. Thank you, all of you. So I love the opportunity to sit down with practicing guides, because I feel like historically so much of our healing systems were built not accordance to what people need, right? They're built and expect people to adapt versus really listening to people and serving what they actually need in the moment year over year. So I'd love, Jonna, to hear with your groups and with your clients, what do you tend to see in your practice right now? Like, what are people coming for? What's showing up in your intakes and coming up in your groups that might be helpful for people to understand and not feel so alone in their process right now?
Yeah, there's a few things that are feeling really prominent right now. The first one, and I know Casey in your group, we've been talking a lot about nervous system regulation and just this need to slow down, calm down, come into the body, especially in my work where I work with a lot of busy, multitasking, often women, but also men, but just like people that are go, 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 go. And they want to just like add healing to their to-do list and check it off real quick and just move through as fast as possible and think, oh, if I can take medicine, that'll just get me there faster, right? And so it's helping them understand that first you have to come into the body and you have to feel. And I would say, yeah, working with them to slow down and recognize this is not a just get it done kind of item. Requires presence and focus and time and commitment. And yeah, along those same lines, another huge theme that's come up in the last couple of weeks is the desire to over intellectualize their experience. So you're working with these people that are it's so ingrained that we fix problems by thinking about it and analyzing it and, figuring it out. And all of this energy is up here. And so they'll like, like you were saying, Michaela, they'll think like, what is my diagnosis and what is the treatment? And, what are my behaviors and how am I acting? And I actually had a really powerful moment this last week in group where we had to just stop everything. And it just was really clear to me that we need to feel, we need to go inside and we need to actually feel. This isn't about knowing more or doing more. This is about feeling and being. And that is like a really hard shift for these high achieving, fast paced people. But we can get there. And so I had a cool breakthrough with a client. A client came to me and said she had a breakthrough in therapy because she had this knowing, like, I have been at the same therapist feeling stuck. And this is the first time I ever cried and actual emotions came up. And so when that happens, it's like a dam breaking open and it allows you to access, like, what are the things that you've just been putting all these layers on top? How can you break those layers open and be raw and be vulnerable and let the stuff bubble up? So that's been big. And then the third thing I would add that's been a theme is people feeling the grind and the burnout, whether it's at work, whether it's in relationships, whether it's even as parents, but just like getting really tired of the day-to-day grind and feeling like there's got to be more. And so they're seeking, and I've worked with clients too that are in this transition out of work into retirement, saying like, looking for passion, looking for joy, looking for where can I find my spark? And that's been a beautiful process of just remembering and slowing down and tuning in. And oftentimes they know it's been that thing that they've just stuffed down for so long that they forgot that they love making art and it lights them up or whatever the thing may be. So again, it kind of all comes down to just like, let's rest, let's go inside and let's really feel what's there. It sounds so simple and can be so hard to get there when we're wired to do the very opposite.
Amazing. Same. Thank you. Jake, you're in the unique position of you are a microdosing guide, but you're also a state licensed psilocybin facilitator in the state of Colorado. So I'm so curious for you to share with listeners, what is the difference between journeying and microdosing? Are they similar? Are they completely different? Any insights or a guidance you have on that topic?
Casey, thank you for that question. And John, I have so many responses. Casey, it's a loaded question because in one way, they're almost identical, microdosing and macrodosing. A lot of the same principles that apply to microdosing directly interface and apply to macrodosing. But there obviously are some really gigantic nuances. And maybe the way that I would frame it would be sort of the difference between like a cathedral and a garden. And so let's say that you're walking up, and sorry, I know there are like religious connotations, but I'm just trying to frame it. As you're walking up to like a sacred space, there's a beautiful garden outside. But then as you walk into the cathedral, time is completely different. The energy is completely different. And so sort of the art of being a guide for the larger journeys would be more equivalent to the cathedral space, where the guide is really serving as the pillars or the foundation of that space, of that container that's being created. The guide also has to be unbelievably cognizant of their own energy. Their own energy, in one regard, sort of serves as like the stained glass windows. And the clearer and more transparent that guide's energy is, the more light that is able to kind of come in and unimpede that individual's unfolding of their experience. And so it's really beautiful in terms of, say, like the size, but once again, all of the same principles for microdosing, many of them apply to macrodosing. Just the role of the guide is slightly different. And so then if we kind of depart the cathedral and go into the garden, the microdosing guide in that regard is maybe more like the horticulturist, where they are there helping educate, illuminating like the role of the seasons, or the way to water a plant or to prune it, which would be similar to, tracking one's own emotions, the season of their emotions. The watering would be, developing, what kind of self-care needs to take place. The pruning would be, what habits need to kind of be adopted. And so in one regard, that would be almost the way that I would describe sort of the differences in terms of the role, but it's still centered around this very like sacred space overall. Maybe a different analogy would be more for like skiing, and just the difference between if you're taking somebody in kind of backcountry, like helicopter stuff, obviously that person needs to sign a whole heck of a lot more waivers. There needs to be a whole lot more screening. We need to do a lot more training, for safety purposes, because you're in a higher risk environment. Whereas if you're getting a guide to guide you up the bunny hills, it's going to be just a little bit different in terms of the risks. Does that make sense? So I just kind of, through analogy, I'm trying to illuminate maybe what some of those differences could be relative to higher dose kind of ceremony sessions and more microdosing, things like that.
Absolutely. Microdosing is bunny hill. I love it. Oh, beautiful. I always share with people when they come to me and they said, should I start with microdosing or is journeying for me? I usually say both. The vast majority of people I've worked with, even those people who had a lot of fear at first about journeying, once they start microdosing and get into relationship with the medicine, they develop that muscle and that confidence and that trust with the medicine and self-trust within themselves, that they build that over time. So it very much is a practice, right, that you build. So yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Another question, Michaela, I receive often is people coming to microdosing and they'll say, well, I'd be best served in a container with a therapist while I microdose or with a coach. How do we determine when someone will be best served by either or? What are some of the things you look for?
Yeah, that is such an important question, Casey, especially today, as so many people are working with plant medicine, whether they're doing a micro or a macro dose. working with these medicines as a tool for a deeper self-connection. So I think the first thing to consider, and for people to really inquire within about themselves, is asking themselves, what kind of support do I need? And where am I at in my life's process right now? Because if somebody is navigating mental health challenges such as clinical depression, anxiety, PTSD, or is moving through something that's extremely overwhelming, destabilizing, and impacting their activities of daily living, working with a licensed therapist is going to be important, because what the therapy space does offer, it offers structure, clinical support, and clinical regulation. And that includes an assessment, really gaining a deeper understanding what someone might be needing mentally, behaviorally, emotionally. But it also includes a treatment plan where there's steps laid out on a path forward, trying to reach goals, certain goals. And I think the most important thing here would also be that there is a risk assessment and a safety assessment. And so oftentimes through a lens of trauma-informed perspective, to ensure that someone's journey and unfolding is held in a very safe container. But on the other hand, a coach or a mentor can also hold a very deeply nourishing and supportive space. And whether someone is moving through or wanting to explore personal growth and development or professional growth and development, creative expression or expansion, and even doing an inner exploration of emotional unfolding, a coach or a mentor may be a beautiful space because it's not in a structured container. It's more of an open, fluid, heart-centered container, and it does not involve clinical or diagnostic lens. And then I would also say sometimes it's neither or. Sometimes a person may have both. They might work with a therapist on their clinical needs support, but they may also want a space where they get to explore more freely their energetic, somatic, and spiritual aspects of a life's journey. So yeah, it really comes to doing that self-inquiry and asking ourselves, what do I need in this moment of time? Where will I be best supported?
Beautiful. I love that. I've had a startling number of people ask when they come to microdosing practice if they have to stop therapy or if they should stop therapy. And I'm like, no, if it's supporting you and it's something that you feel is really benefiting you and your heart and your spirit, absolutely. Yeah, I love Jake's analogy that microdosing is like a garden. It very, very much is. And I find it's this practice over time, it is like a forest. You need different things over time. Your relationship with the medicine is always changing over time, and you'll play the different roles in a diverse ecosystem and a forest setting. So yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Jana, so coming from a corporate background, a lot of people who are being called to practice with medicines or serve medicines are coming from corporate backgrounds where they have a titled position, they have a lot of responsibility, their status and perhaps their identity is tied to their work that they've held for several decades. So the transition and mindset around shifting to guideship can be significant, right? There can be self-doubt. There can be a lot of concern around how are people going to receive this when I share this with people who are used to seeing me in a specific way with a specific lens. So I'd love for you to share what that experience was like, kind of coming out to people and stepping into this. Anything you'd love to share?
Yeah. Yeah. So I can absolutely relate to that. I know how hard it is. And we do, especially I feel like corporate people, we attach our identity to our title, our job title. And so there was just a lot. I think this was a long process for me. I didn't come out at all until I felt like I had to, even though I was doing the work and I was passionate about it. It wasn't until I realized if I'm going to try to make money doing this, then I actually need to put myself out there And that is going to require some risks and some loss and some grief, and there will be people in my professional network that might lose respect for me. And that was just a risk I had to take, right? I mean, I'm in Colorado, but I work with people all over the place. And even in Colorado, it's not like everybody's on board. There's differing opinions and lots of judgments still. So yeah, I had to come to terms with that like some people might be cool with this. Other people might be like, what happened to Jana? Did she like lose it? So yeah, that's a process that you have to like grapple with. But I got to the point and I spent a lot of time crafting my come out email on LinkedIn. My parents didn't even know, like I had family members I hadn't told, but I spent a lot of time trying to get the message just right. And then I hit post and I kind of freaked out a little bit and went to bed. And the next day I was blown away by how much support I got and how many people were believers, or maybe they didn't even know what the heck I was talking about, but they were like, you go girl for doing your own thing. There was just such an outpouring of love and support. And, working in the well-being space, I have quite a few clinical folks, I'll call them. So lots of health coaches and RDs and RNs and doctors, physicians, and a lot of those types of people in my network. And these people that are also forward thinking are listening to Huberman and reading the research, and they are curious about microdosing. So this ended up being a huge advantage for me, I think, because they could now see someone that they, I hope, respected and trusted from corporate America talking about psychedelics. They knew I wasn't just some weirdo that didn't know anything. They knew I was going to bring rigor and research and integrity into the space. And so, our chief medical officer from my former company made a comment on my post, and then all of his followers who had a lot of respect for him. It just was like way better than I would have anticipated. And I got a lot of leads. I got a lot of people reaching out and just curious or wanting to learn more, or like, what the heck is microdosing and why are you doing this? And, what happened to your career? So, it's not an easy challenge. But the other piece that I think made it a little bit easier for me is I had to really think about how this new path ties in with my old path. And I found that there are common threads. Always in my life, I've always been on the cutting edge of what's new in this space, right? And I've always been passionate about helping people with well-being. And so this is really no different than anything I did before. And so when I came to that realization, it did bring me a lot of confidence when I could see my own path and tie it into my professional path. But yeah, making the switch, and it probably depends what industry you're in. I'm sure there's industries where this is a much more difficult transition than others. But I think it's just about take your time and just know that it's stepping into your authenticity. It's like, I am not ashamed to be who I am. I'm not ashamed to be doing the work I do. I'm proud of it. And I'm giving that to the world.
Love it. So inspiring. Thank you so much. One of my favorite things about our community is when people step into practice, and a lot of them live in places and communities they can't talk to anyone about this practice. And they live in a state it's very much not legal or accepted. And they'll come to a call and they find the others, and they find others in their state. And they're like, really? Are we everywhere? Like, yes, we're everywhere. We're everywhere. Yeah. Thank you. Super inspiring. Jake, I'd love to ask you, when people come to you, given that you support microdosing and journey clients, if someone is coming to you and they say, I am curious about journeying, I want to get to that place, but I think I want to work with you and start with microdosing first. Can you share with them some of the things you might respond with, any guidance you would come at if someone wanted to utilize practice microdosing for an eventual journey? I'm thinking common questions I hear are how long should I work with you in microdosing? What medicine should I work? Should it be the same medicine that I'm going to ultimately journey with? Those are some of the questions I commonly get asked.
Casey, I think the way that I would frame it would be similar to tuning your instrument before a concert. And I feel that microdosing is a really wonderful way to help achieve kind of that tuning. And it takes everyone maybe a little bit different in terms of time of how long it might take to tune their guitar, their cello, or whatever. And so it's hard for me to kind of give a specific timeline of what that duration would be. But I think generally speaking, it's a good idea to have a tuned instrument before a symphony. And so generally I would recommend that, microdosing is a good thing, leading up to, some of the deeper work. And part of that is because I also see that microdosing is a really effective way to help an individual develop kind of like the habits and the skills in terms of developing a relationship with the compound prior to this large experience. And in one regard, like the work doesn't actually begin until after the experience. Like the work really begins in the integration phase. And that's really when it's critical to lean on those developed habits and skills and kind of ways of being, to make sure that you can most effectively integrate any of those insights or whatever the unfolding was, whatever their experience was, that they're able to effectively integrate it. And certainly microdosing is really effective, can be, deeply supportive following, of course, naturally. But I think that's generally kind of the way that I would frame it. One of the other reasons why I would say am like really leaning into the habits and skills component, like piece of developing the relationship with these compounds, is that a number of individuals kind of come forward and they're like, I want neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is going to make me better. And I love the sentiment. Like, yes, I'm all for it. Great. Like, let's do that. But neuroplasticity is rather about essentially a state that the brain can be in, meaning that it can allow the brain to develop those new habits and skills in this direction. It can also allow the brain to develop the thoughts and habits in a very different direction too. So, so we want to make sure that they're leveraging the neuroplasticity that they're looking for in the way that I think they intend it. And microdosing tends to be a little bit of a kind of a better way to help facilitate that, or at least maybe get that kind of point across, that the medicine's not going to fix you. You are going to fix you. The medicine is there to help you do that. And so I think that is a really important kind of piece. This all, I think, falls under this umbrella of like helping individuals develop psychedelic literacy. And I think that is something that like our culture and our society really needs to kind of help kind of develop, of essentially the skill set necessary to leverage these compounds. And so developing that psychedelic literacy with microdosing, I think, is a really wonderful foundational element that helps allow them to more effectively access and get the value that they're looking for, the longer term value that they're looking for. A lot of people are going to get value from these big experiences. Some won't, but many will. But you'll get more. There's like a benefit maximization component to microdosing in tandem with kind of the deeper level work, that I think is important. And sorry, the last thing is being able to work with an individual, say through a microdosing protocol prior to a larger journey, I think is really essential because it helps develop trust. And trust is like the single most important element for the productivity that can take place in these larger sessions, and frankly, even in the microdosing component. And Michaela, that's why I really appreciate kind of the framework in which you're operating, because I think an individual is able to trust the person they're working with when there's like a shared commonality in terms of background, in terms of their like shared humanity. And that shared humanity isn't exclusive to the medical field. And so I think it's incumbent and prudent for individuals from all different types of backgrounds to be able to support this work to help increase the number of like humanity access points that allows for a deepening of trust in entering this space. So I know I went on a tangent, but that's kind of the way that I see the role that microdosing can play in the context of larger work, but also in the context of overall like psychedelic literacy and developing a relationship with these compounds as tools.
Love it. Love it. For those of you who are just listening to the audio, we're all nodding. We're all nodding right now. Thank you so much. Michaela, when people come to practice, oftentimes they wonder, all of us here offer one-on-one support and guidance and coaching, and all of us offer group work too, group immersions, group containers. So if someone is new to microdosing practice, what are some of the things you would help them with, Michaela, if they're trying to determine, would I be best served practicing one-on-one with a guide or a coach, or would I be best served being in a group container?
Yeah. Again, I would slow down in that process and really help that person inquire within and asking themselves, what do I need in this moment in time? What is it that I'm working through? And what kind of container will help me feel safe in my unfolding? And so, if somebody is moving through something very tender, personal, or even complex, doing a one-on-one container with someone is going to offer a space where there's presence, attunement, and support that's specifically tailored to the individual needs. Also, if someone is new to microdosing and working with plant medicine, and might be feeling a little vulnerable or uncertain, a one-on-one container can offer maybe a little bit of a softer ground to be in as you are learning about the medicine and learning more and more about yourself. But on the other hand, again, a group container has something beautiful to offer as well. Within a group container, there is that shared residence. There is that collective wisdom. There's the witnessing and being witnessed. And I think in a group, when someone can speak to something that we've been feeling for quite some time, that in itself can be such a beautiful exhale. And the encouragement and empowerment that we gain from a group, realizing that we're not alone in this process. And so it can be a very beautiful experience when that container is held with care and integrity. And I think, inviting people to do this self-inquiry is also medicine in itself, because it starts the process of learning what is it that I need versus doing what I think I should be doing. So, yeah, that inner inquiry.
Love it. Thank you so much. Jana, when people come to practice, a big part of, to me, differentiating between just microdosing on one's own versus having some guidance is to really be able to see the clients and some of the lifestyle practices that will really help amplify and enhance their microdosing experience. So can you talk about how you work with people and assess some of the lifestyle practices you might recommend to support their journey?
Yes, I love this question so much. I think about, when you're going into a journey, there's preparation that you need to do to understand what you're doing. And lifestyle is, for me, a piece of the preparation, even for microdosing. And so I find this, there's certain times in a person's life where they're really open to making changes, lifestyle changes. Like if you're pregnant or if you have a health issue, and those lifestyle changes are more likely to stick because you have a very clear drive and passion and purpose for why you're doing it. And so I love to use this time when someone's entering into a microdosing space to slow down again and think about, like, what is your why? What is your intention? And I like to capture this as a time to layer on some of these lifestyle changes. So during my intake, I have people do a self-assessment around a number of different lifestyle habits and behaviors. And it's not about me judging or critiquing. It's about them coming to an awareness of, like, I've been really wanting to work on this thing for a while, right? And I love microdosing because it is so holistic. And so when they bring their intention of wanting to change a lifestyle behavior paired with microdosing, not only do they have this, like, deeper intention and they're setting their mind up for success, but they're also getting the effects of neuroplasticity and really truly planning a change. And so I use a lot of behavior change science. I often have my clients read James Clear, Atomic Habits. I think it's just a really easy, accessible book around how to set habits that stick. And we talk about that based on whatever it is that they want to work on. And so, in the assessment, it's things, the obvious things, like, are you moving your body every day? What's your diet like? Processed foods, alcohol intake, drinking water, and sleep. But it's also things like, are you going outside every day? Do you get sunlight every day? So we talk about circadian rhythm and how that plays in. And so I love it because we're not just treating one thing, we're treating a human with all these variables, whether they're hormonal or lifestyle or whatever it is, it's all coming into play. And what's cool is you never know when people start feeling so much better. Is it the microdose, or is it the fact that you're going out for a walk every day for 30 minutes, or you're being more mindful? And it doesn't matter because you're seeing results. So I love just being able to layer on all the things as they're in this really primed, motivated place of, I'm ready to change my life. And then that can help be a driver. Yeah, I guess I just want to emphasize that with lifestyle changes, I'm very cautious around, it's not about you should do something, right? It's about whatever it is that they're wanting and why they're wanting it. And sometimes it's just as simple as, like, bringing an awareness to the habit or behavior and seeing what happens. And it's amazing how often just bringing that intention and awareness changes the behavior almost automatically. I had a client who had a drink every night, 1 or 2 drinks every single night. And she, at 2 weeks, said, I just stopped my evening drink. I don't even miss it. It wasn't even hard. I'm just like, wow, amazing. So yeah, it's so powerful to tie that in.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, what John had just expressed, it is the joy and delight of being a guide. And this work is, when you're in it, it's endlessly inspiring and endlessly fascinating how the medicine works with people individually. Yes, with habit change, I've seen it's the neuroplasticity, but it's also this kind of beautiful cascade that happens and domino effect that once people relax their nervous system, they sleep better. And when they sleep better, they eat better. When they eat better, they exercise. And it's easier to love and come from compassion. And it's this beautiful circle that just continues to grow over time. Yeah, thank you. Love it. Jake, I know a lot of people who are listening are going to say stroke. I haven't really heard of stroke in the context of psilocybin. Can this help me, my loved one? Most of us have a relative that have been impacted by stroke. It seems to be happening to people earlier in life now that we're reading about. So for those people who are curious, I know you've set up a nonprofit and you have a special interest in this work. So anything you'd like to share to listeners who've been impacted by stroke around research or anecdotal stories that you have in this space?
I appreciate you bringing light to this area, this little corner. It's one of the key things that I'm trying to do. So I guess first off, none of this is medical advice. I'm not a doctor. Just a little disclaimer. And nothing of what I'm about to say is proven. It's just simply just based on observation. But Casey, as you said, I started a Colorado nonprofit called the Psychedelic Stroke Institute. You can read more about it at psychedelicstrokeinstitute.org. And really the goal of that is to help educate individuals of the role that psychedelics are playing in terms of different types of neural recovery, and provide educational kind of resources, so that individuals would be able to make as informed decision as possible as to whether or not something like this may be appropriate for them to explore. So it's purely education and kind of information based. That said, what I've also been doing is I've been helping individuals recovering from stroke and guiding them through microdosing protocols. And one of the things that I've been doing is gathering data before. So just like Jana, capturing a baseline assessment and then capturing a kind of a post microdosing protocol assessment and just kind of comparing the results. And so I'm just putting together, in one regard, it's very small, but in one regard, it's kind of like the world's largest database of psychedelic impacts of stroke recovery and sharing the results. The general hypothesis that I have that led me to trying this on myself was that, these compounds help with neuroplasticity. They help with neurogenesis through increase of BDNF. And they also help reduce neural inflammation. And those are the three things that really mess you up after a stroke. And so that was the reason why I brought them on board as, hey, these might be a supportive kind of tool to help with that. As a result of kind of what I've been observing, a few things that I think are particularly powerful. The first is that when I had my stroke, the doctor said essentially I had like 18 to 24 months to get my recovery. And after that 24-month period, like you plateau and like whatever recovery you got, like that's it. Which A, like how the heck can you say that to somebody? But B, what is interesting is I seem to be detecting that individuals who are far outside of that window are making incremental improvement. And I want to be very clear. We're not, getting full recoveries or anything like that, but we're detecting something. Something is improving. And it's improving when it shouldn't. Whether that's the medicine, whether that's the individual, we don't know, but who cares? If it's working, great. So some of the things that I'm observing is that individuals are increasing their kind of hand motor function, which is groundbreaking. The biggest impact I'm seeing is, frankly, just on the emotional dimension. An individual who experiences a stroke has to go through a tremendous amount of grief. And that grief is related to the identity that they left behind when the stroke took place, and they have to reform into a completely different container. And there's a tremendous amount of grief related to that. And so there's a lot of identity management, mismanagement, and stuff like that. And so the microdosing seems to help facilitate that refilling of whatever that container size may be. Which I think is a really important kind of aspect. And it was one that I directly experienced. In one regard, it felt like it calmed my mind down enough to give my body the space that it needed to heal. In one regard, humans have been around for, hundreds of thousands of years. And so like our bodies have the user manual to fix everything. Our bodies have a vested interest in figuring out how to fix things. So like they know how to do this, and we just need to get out of our way and let our body kind of do the fixing, do the healing. So it's been pretty kind of exquisite to see. I've seen some tremendous enhancements in terms of sleep. Casey, you mentioned that, even like being able to have a really good night's sleep really just sets you up for success, to have the energy to do the work. And I think that's another really critical thing, is that these microdosing protocols are not coming in isolation. It's best when paired in conjunction to all of the therapies, all of the modalities. In addition to, it simply helps facilitate the outcomes that we're looking for with the work that we're kind of plopping in. And then I guess the last thing is, not everyone has responded, which is important too. And just as all things, not everything is right for everyone, and that's okay. And so I think that's an important kind of component, and just part and parcel with sort of the kind of how nascent and new this space is, and why I'm trying to kind of get the word out to see if we can continue from like a grassroots kind of floor of is this actually something that's working? And is there a medicine in particular that would help facilitate this the best?
Love it. Thank you so much. Next question is for all of you. So I'd love to, if someone is drawn to studying to become a guide, or drawn to become a guide, and this could be anything from I want to be a professional guide to I want to learn these skills to support my community and my family, is often how it starts. So given your experience and individual paths, I'd love for you guys to share anything you learned along the way, things that surprised you in your journey, things that you wish you would have done sooner, maybe along the way, things you would have done differently. Maybe, Jake, let's stay with you to get started.
I think through this work, it has helped me. I wish that somebody would have told me this sooner. And it is essentially this realization that there seems to be a default way of living. And what I mean by that is, individuals tend to go through life in this like do, have, be kind of mode. And it's like, I need to do this job to have this money to be happy. And then they kind of go through that, and they're constantly doing all of these things, trying to achieve all of these things. And then when they achieve it, they're just as empty as they were when they started. And through doing this work, through microdosing, through entering this space, through entering this mycelial network, I think something that it helped me recognize is there's like an inversion that can take place. And it actually comes down to like be, do, have. So you come from a place of being, you cultivate your happiness, you cultivate your fulfillment in exactly who you are now. And from that way of being, then you do the things that continue to help fulfill that way of being. And then you have these things. And I think that why I bring that up is because psychedelics are not required to engage in that kind of inversion process. Psychedelics are a way to teach us what that inversion process can do and the impact that it can have on our lives. And I think that that applies to kind of how you can approach microdosing. It can apply to how you approach macrodosing, and then it can apply to nothing related to the psychedelic space. And I think that that has been an unbelievable lesson, and something that I, in one regard, kind of try to communicate to other individuals, especially then if they're interested in the psychedelic space, because then it just adds, a lot of fuel and kind of greases the wheels in that way of being.
Gorgeous. Yeah. Michaela, how about you?
Oh, that was beautiful, Jake. I think if somebody is wanting to become a guide, whether microdosing, facilitating big journeys, and whether for themselves or more in a professional role, I think the first thing I would say, do your own deep work, and not necessarily through just medicine practice, but get to know yourself, get to know your nervous system, get to know your patterns, get to know what your resources are, what you need to help ground and soothe when life can sometimes, bring in challenges. And because we know that this work brings forth that what it is that we carry. And so to be more attuned to our own needs and our own patterns is going to help you to become a more skillful and safe guide for others. And the other thing I would say is don't rush the process. There is no fast track to becoming an embodied guide. I would say let the path unfold. Yes, study the science that has supported this work, but also study the energetics, the ethics of this work, and the ancestral lineage of these practices. So allow the path to unfold through experience, humility, and mentorship. I think that's one of the things that I would have wished I had a little bit earlier on. And Casey, when I met you and became part of your group, to have a space where you don't have to show up as having to know everything, but you can show up, Joan, like you said, with curiosity and openness to continue to learn, and that will eventually help you step into more of that role that you are meant to step into. And so I think that those would be my two thoughts that I would want to put out there. And also the thing that I learned that has been the most meaningful for me throughout this whole process is learning to listen deeply with curiosity and compassion, and not just to my own body and my own needs, but also to the person sitting in front of me and to the wisdom of the medicine itself. Because, this is not about needing to fix someone or something. It's not about leading from the place of ego, but really in this work, we learn to walk beside someone as they meet themselves through understanding, through love and compassion. And it's this kind of guidance that allows there to be that unfolding and trust in the unfolding. And I do believe that this work is a lifelong journey, that we're on this continuum of learning, growing, and remembering. So, yeah.
Lovely. Jana, how about you?
Yeah, I'm just like over here. Yes, yes, yes to everything you guys are saying. Yeah, what would I add? I think that the mentorship and the support, I feel very fortunate that from before I was doing this work, I was learning from people that were doing this work. That was really important. I think that helped me understand how I could be in integrity in this space, which was really important for me. I love what Michaela was saying about committing to your own practice. And I think I would just add or emphasize developing a deep relationship with the medicine you're working with. Because as you were talking about be, do, have, Jake, and that process and inverting, I have learned, I think, a little bit. It's been a rough road these last few months, but this needing to really trust the medicine to guide me to the direction that I need to go next, instead of using, coming up with a strategy right. It's about really being in your heart and really trusting that the medicine will guide you to where you need to go. Another thing I'll add is that practice clients are hugely valuable when you're first starting out. I learned and grew so much in my first, I'd say, 10 clients. And I'm still learning and growing so much every day with every client. But I just think practice clients for building your skills, building your confidence, even recording a practice client and watching yourself back so you can see how you might be projecting your own opinions or jumping in too soon or not allowing space, or there's so much you can learn from watching yourself back. And mentorship is huge. Those were my key takeaways.
Love it. All of you. Thank you so, so much. Such a beautiful conversation. For listeners who are looking for guideship and support, I know many of you have groups coming up soon. So can you let everybody know where to find you? Are you on the socials? What is your website? We'll drop these in the show notes too, but for people who are just listening in, if you want to share those. John, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not great on the socials, but you can come to my website, which is betterwildhealing.com. And I do have a 12-week program starting on September 4th. So I'd love to chat with anyone who's interested. And I offer a free consult to see if it's a good fit for you.
Lovely. Jake, how about you?
Yeah, I actually have a microdosing education cohort that's beginning September 9th. You can find that at alringo.com, ALRINGO.com. And then as well, keep an eye on psychedelicstrokeinstitute.org.
Beautiful. Michaela?
People can find me at journeytoself.life. There will be information about the mentorship programs that I offer. And also in September, I will be supporting a ceremonial retreat. There's information on the website on that. And then social media, my handle is mpk.becoming.you. I love sharing on there some of my tidbits and wisdom that come through. So I'd love to have anyone who's willing to follow this journey is welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you three so much for your beautiful work, vision, honesty, and voice. Appreciate you guys very much. And thank you, everybody who is listening in. Please read up and follow these folks. We'll drop their handles in the show notes as well. And we'll look forward to seeing you back in a couple weeks. Have a great day. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. Ready to take the next step? Please visit us online at microdosingforhealing.com. There you'll find lots of information about our global community, professional training programs, and upcoming immersions. See you there.